Time for our cash tag segment. For that, let's bring in Landon Swan. He's a co-founder at LikeFolio. Landon, welcome back to the show and happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Tom. And hey, Kevin, it's great to be here.
Been the longest week in a while for me, but when you look at AMD, investors probably cheering, hitting all-time highs, up another 4% today. Do you guys have the data to back this rally up? Because I don't even think they've sold an AI chip, that MI300 that they've got. I don't even think there's been one delivered yet that's supposed to come down the pipeline this quarter. Do you have the data to back up this move?
I mean, it depends. Are we going to compare it to Nvidia or are we going to compare it to AMD? Because, if you just look at AMD, it's doing okay. The mentions are strong on a year-over-year basis. It's got decent happiness. Web visits are up slightly. The stock is up significantly. I mean, it's doubled in the last 5 months, not to mention the last few days. It's really done extremely well. But you compare it to Nvidia, it's doing better. I mean, the web visits you can see on Nvidia is down 16%. AMD is up slightly, basically flat. Happiness, as I mentioned, Nvidia 69, AMD 71, so they're pretty even there. AMD just had a quarter that they reported where they expected Q1 to be about down 10% in revenue, blaming client and gaming segments being a little bit weaker. So a lot of it has to do with their PC segments, which before AI was a big portion of this company. So now it's all eyes towards AI. It's extremely important. When you look at one versus the other, the stocks are both just off the charts. And even though AMD is up 145%, I think, in the last year, Nvidia is up more than that. And so you're just trying to decide which one is the better value, I guess, if you're getting into that word, when it comes to the AI space. And it's much like any emerging technology. It's very difficult to estimate what the future may hold. You just want to be a part of it. You want to have a piece of this pie because it could, the pie itself could 10 or 100x. And so you don't want to be on the sidelines trying to decide which one of these companies is better. I can tell you there's a lot of exciting stuff coming from AMD. Now, it's all in the future, as you kind of alluded to. But still, that's what matters to investors, is the future has to hold. One of the most exciting things, I think, is this Ryzen 8000G chip that they're talking about. That's effectively going to be able to put AI onto individual computers, which we were all blown away by ChatGPT initially, and we've seen all the other ones that came out. You guys talked about Google in your last segment and how they've just completely mishandled AI, and I agree. It's just been ridiculous. The sentiment around that and the consumer reaction has been unbelievable. You just cannot interject an agenda-driven programming in the back end of an AI, and they've clearly been outed as sort of guilty of that. And I think people are losing confidence. So when you talk about this new chip, this Ryzen 8000G that AMD is building, you're going to be able to have people having AI on their own computer, which, it's going to get rid of all of that kind of that stuff that Gemini got into. But B, it's also going to have the data security that you are comfortable with. Everything on your computer is going to stay on your computer. And so you don't have to go out to the cloud and pay the fees for these services. So it's really going to enable a lot of cool stuff on the home computer. And you can see here this mentions chart. I mean, obviously, mentions are strong. Stock is stronger. It's made a huge run up here. So the data is supportive of AMD moving forward at these levels. Really, we're getting into speculation as to how big this AI pie is going to grow. We know they're a player. How big is it going to grow? I think it's going to be pretty big. I think it's revolutionary technology. And so I'm willing to take bets on AMD, even Nvidia here. But you just know that you're overpaying now. It's just in 10 years from now, you look back and think you were overpaying. Probably not, because I think the pie is going to grow. But I am very bullish on some of the stuff that they're coming out with, that one chip in particular, because I think that's what the world's hungry for. I mean, we've seen so many advancements and so many impressive demonstrations of what AI can do. To get it out of the few hands, the hands of just the big companies, and you seeing what they want you to see and getting it into your hands and you using it the way you want to use it, it's extremely empowering for the consumer. And I'm not only bullish on what it'll do for the country and for the world overall, but I think it's people are going to love this product, and a lot of people are going to want to have PCs with that enabled on it.
Landon, I want to focus on your year-over-year change in visits, because Tom and I have a little theme going on here for Nvidia and AMD today. Everyone's going to get a whiff of it in a minute. We all know that Nvidia is the foundational hardware for AI, but your data showing Nvidia down 16%, AMD up 1%. There it is on the screen. Is that a precursor? Are you starting to see a little bit of competition seep in? Intel is coming out with an AI chip. AMD is probably the strongest competitor to Nvidia. Is it time? Is the momentum starting to turn where the enormous head start that Nvidia has on everyone, is that relationship starting to firm up a bit with your data?
Yeah, I think you could make that argument. I mean, if we're talking about, Nvidia's down a few points and AMD's up a couple of points, that's one thing. That's margin of error type stuff. But this is a much more significant number. And with the stock performance of Nvidia, they're pretty much priced to perfection and complete AI dominance, right? They're priced to not only dominate, but also for the pie to grow exponentially and for them to control the majority of that pie. So yes, I do think that this is kind of a little bit of a yellow flag, not in the AI space, but in the which company are you investing in question, right? One of them is up 2.5x this year, one of them's up 1.5x this year, and the one that's up 1.5x, that's in AMD, is looking like it's growing more firmly than the other. So NVIDIA's had a fantastic run, and the other thing you have to take a little bit of a grain of salt with this is, one of these companies started a lot earlier than the other one, so the year over year is going to have a higher bar for NVIDIA than it did for AMD. But still, we're looking at trajectory. Which way are these companies going? And right now, AMD has the slightly better trajectory, even if it is in, second place by quite a bit. You still want to bet on the one that's making the right moves. And so, but I think you can probably justify investments in either one as long as you can stomach a really high multiple, a really high price. But yes, I don't think it's a super clear, obvious expectation that NVIDIA is the one to invest in. Like, that's no longer the case. I think now you could make an argument for AMD being a great AI investment as well.
Yeah, the pie is big, but your chart on mentions the stock price is basically meeting it now. I mean, they had earnings just about a month ago. Would you guys still be buyers at these levels or wait for pullbacks or what?
Well, if you were asking me this on Wednesday, I'd probably say yes. We're at a different price than we were a couple of days ago. This thing just keeps making new highs. It's tough. I did like it in the high 170s. 200, it's just a little bit more difficult, I think. So on pullbacks, yes. At these breakout levels, maybe not so much. I mean, it's tough. It's always tough to balance being a value investor in an emerging technology. It's just, they don't go together very well. So you got to decide, are you willing to be, the person that buys high and sells higher, or do you want to buy on dips and maybe miss something? For me, I'm more comfortable waiting a little bit because I think there's going to be pretty volatile stock movements ahead for both of these companies, especially AMD. Definitely some volatile movements ahead, and I think you'll have opportunities under where we are now. You don't need to go chasing, but 10 years from now, I think that the difference between 180 and 200 is irrelevant because I think both of these stocks are going to be soaring because of the exponential growth of AI.
All right, long-term outlook. All right, great stuff. Great data as always, Landon. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right, that's Landon Swan, co-founder at LikeFolio, breaking down the data for us, AMD.